Okay. Move this across. Sorry, I'm kind of messing with my screen right now. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to our live webinar today. My name is John Culpepper. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm very honored to host on behalf of Pride Frisco our first ever live webinar. We'll go ahead and get started. Just a little bit about Pride Frisco and who we are. We were founded in 2021, and we are the first and only 501c3 based in Frisco, Texas, supporting our LGBTQIA plus individuals in Frisco and the North Texas area through family-friendly, inclusive, affirming social and educational events, scholarships, professional resources, and strategic partnerships with supportive organizations. Our ultimate goal is to establish a community center. And a little bit about that. I want to kind of cover, oops, sorry. Go back one slide. Oh, I'm messing this up, so sorry. Here's some housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is being recorded right now, want to give you a little overview of the control settings. You'll see I think it's on your right side of your screen, you'll see an orange arrow that you can expand to see some of the controls in your GoToWebinar session. And there's a place in there for you to chat as well as submit your questions. Everyone is muted right now except for myself, the host, and the presenter. You can submit your questions during the presentation. You don't have to wait until the end. Several of you have submitted questions when you were going through the registration process. So our presenter has incorporated that into their presentation. After the webinar, you're going to receive a survey, and we really hope that you provide your candid feedback because we want to make sure that as we continue to deliver these presentations, that they are very informative to our community and very helpful. So please give us your honest feedback there. As well, I will follow up after the webinar with links to the recording as well as resources through email. While the content of this webinar has some legal bearings, this webinar and all of our webinars are for informational purposes only. It's not intended to be legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Okay, so those housekeeping items are out of the way. So we can talk about this session. Now, I won't go into the details. I won't steal our presenter's thunder, but this live webinar is on LGBTQIA plus youth rights in schools and what parents should know. And you can see on your screen right now some of the topics that our presenter will cover. As well as I wanted to highlight a couple of future offerings that we are working on in the background, including a name and gender marker correction in Texas, and how to navigate the healthcare system, as well as putting together an LGBTQIA plus career panel in the various disciplines. So without much ado, I want to introduce our presenter, Marianne Howland. Marianne is an education and family lawyer since 2006. Marianne is the passion is in helping and protecting children and families in difficult situations, with the focus that includes issues with schools such as bullying, discrimination, and discipline, specifically as these issues impact the LGBTQIA community and children. So with that, I want to hand this over to Marianne. And let me do that real quick. Okay, Marianne, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Tell me if y'all can see my
Yes.
PowerPoint. Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much. I hope that I can answer questions for you guys and empower y'all and bring some relief because when you know your rights, you can talk to the schools and get some relief for you and your kiddos. So let me get started by talking to you about bullying. So that's defined by the Texas Education Code. It's really if it has the effect of either physically harming or even damaging your student's property or placing them in reasonable fear that their person or property might be damaged. And if it's sufficiently severe enough or persistent enough to create an intimidating or threatening or abusive educational environment for the student. This can take place on site of the school or off site. So that's kind of how cyberbullying comes in. If you think about where that's coming from, it's usually not occurring at school, but it can still be dealt with by the school. So that's something to keep in mind. Harassment is a little different, but it's still something the school can deal with either on site, if it occurs on site, or off site. And that's threatening to cause harm or bodily injury, engaging in sexually intimidating conduct, physical damage to the property of the other student, any malicious action that substantially harms their either physical or emotional safety. Okay, so that's broader than bullying. But so it really, if something's happening with your kiddo in school where they're being bullied or harassed, that's going to fall within these two definitions, and you will be able to address it with the school. So it doesn't have to be a pattern, doesn't have to be an ongoing pattern. It can happen one time, and you can still address it with the school. So that's something to keep in mind. When you guys realize that your kiddo is being bullied or harassed, you need to ask the school immediately to open a bullying investigation. You need to use those words. Otherwise, the school will pretend like they don't know what you're asking. So while that investigation is going on, you can request safety measures. So you can say, I want that bully removed from my kid's class. I don't want my kid to have to be anywhere near that bully. You can ask that the bully sign a stay away agreement. Don't fall into the trap of having your student, your kiddo, also sign that stay away agreement. If your child's being bullied, they're not doing anything wrong. They don't need to sign a stay away agreement. Okay, so if the school says, oh, we'll do a mutual one, don't do that. And you don't have to. You can ask that the school interview witnesses of the bullying. So if something's happening with your kiddo, ask your kid who was there, who saw that, get names, descriptions. I guarantee you some school staff member is going to know who they're talking about, and then they can interview these kids. Okay, so that's generalized bullying, but what we really need to be focusing on is is there an undercurrent of discrimination for this for these incidents? Usually, if one of our kids who identifies as LGBTQ is being bullied, it does tend to have something to do with that identification. So that's where Title IX comes in. So that is a federal law that the government has interpreted to include any kind of discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. So that includes transgender students, that includes gay and lesbian students, non-binary students. Okay, so this is a broader definition than what originally was defined by Title IX. So it's very helpful for parents that this includes our LGBTQ kids. So if your child is being dead named, misgendered, bullied for their sexual orientation, any kind of name calling or slurs related to that LGBTQ identification, that is discrimination and bullying. So you can ask for your bullying investigation. You can also ask for your Title IX investigation in addition to the bullying investigation. Each district has a Title IX coordinator that can direct that investigation. There are some processes with the school, like an internal grievance process that you can do. I don't encourage that because it doesn't really bring results. It's like asking a criminal who committed a crime against you to investigate himself. So he's not going to really find that he did anything wrong. Same thing with the TEA and grievance process, the Texas Education Agency, they tend to side with the schools. So if you feel like the school has done these investigations and you're still not getting any relief, now's the time to contact the Office of Civil Rights, fill out their complaint form, give all the information of what happened, and ask for the Office of Civil Rights to investigate the school. That's much more effective, okay? Because it's a completely independent organization, and schools are afraid of Office of Civil Rights investigations because that could ultimately lead to a discrimination lawsuit, Title IX lawsuit, something along those lines. So those are sometimes even just telling a school, if we can't get this resolved, I think I'm gonna have to go to the Office of Civil Rights. We'll get the school's attention. Regarding names and pronouns for our students, this is a big one. You're gonna hear schools tell you that they have to use the child's legal name, but that they can use nicknames. So that's not actually exactly accurate. Both the Texas Association of the School Boards and the Texas Education Code only require that you use the legal surname of a child. So you do have to use their legal last name, but you don't have to use their legal first name. So when schools are telling you, well, we can't change the system, we have to use what's on their birth certificate, that's not accurate. So you can push back on that. What I would encourage you to do is talk to the school early and often. Before the school year starts, talk to your principal, vice principal, make sure that the teachers are aware of what name, pronouns your child wants to use so that it's in the paperwork. If you know that your child's going to have a substitute teacher soon, contact the school, remind them of the name and pronoun, because especially as the kids move on to junior high and high school, they have a lot of classes, there's a lot of students in the schools. This information can get lost in the shuffle. So this is something you just have to stay on top of the school about. A lot of times schools will tell you if you have a court order, they will change the child's name in the system. So that is helpful. So if you have two parents who agree that the child's name can be changed to their preferred names and pronouns, that's great. And I know that John mentioned that they're going to talk about that in future webinars, and that's very helpful because then you don't have to worry about it. There's usually different software that the schools use for different systems, and so you're going to want to make sure that they change the name in all of the systems. If a teacher is refusing to use the proper name and pronouns, as it stands right now, that is a violation of Title IX. I will talk a little bit more about some of the bills that are in our Texas legislature right now that one of them would allow teachers to refuse to use the preferred name and pronouns. That's obviously very concerning. And so I'll give you guys a link to our Texas bill tracker that is tracking all of the anti-LGBTQ bills and where they are in the process. So, but as it stands right now, the Texas Association of School Boards and Title IX say use the child's preferred name and pronouns unless it's prohibited by law. So that's where we stand right now. Okay, bathrooms. And I know this was a question that someone had. Right now, there's no law, Texas law, against a child using the bathroom of the gender that they identify with. Now, you also need to check your local school board policies, depending on what school district you're in, because they may have a law about that. And of course, our Texas legislature is now trying to pass a law. My advice to all my parents and students is don't check with the school. If your kid wants to use the bathroom that they identify with, no one's going to be checking their gender before they go into these bathrooms, and they certainly better not, or that would be assault. And so just don't bring it up to the school. Now, if your child doesn't feel comfortable using the bathroom that they identify with, or either bathroom, then talk to the school and see if the school will allow them to use the nurse bathroom or staff bathrooms. Most schools do that. I will tell you that my experience with most schools is that they really do care about the kids and want to do what's best for the kids. And a lot of times when they aren't doing what's best for the kids in these situations, it's because of pressure from other parents. So just keep that in mind. And if you talk to the school, talk to them about the bathroom, explain the situation, because our biggest concern, of course, is safety of our kiddos. And so if your child is going to use a bathroom of the gender that they identify with, just make sure you have a safety plan in place with your kiddo. Make sure that they know what to do if another kid is bothering them or trying to look at them in the stall, anything like that. Just make sure you've got a good safety plan in place for your kids. Okay. The next one I want to talk to y'all about is PE and athletics. Right now, we've got a 2021 law that was passed here in Texas that says UIL cannot allow a child of the biological opposite sex to play on an interscholastic athletic team. So our kids are already prohibited from playing sports in a school on the gender of the team's gender that they identify with. So that kind of takes care of that issue. Obviously, I mean, it's discrimination in my opinion, and I don't think it'll stand up to constitutional scrutiny, but it's the law right now. So, but your kid may still have PE and athletics that is a required credit in school. And that's a problem because we do not want, I don't think any of us want our transgender kiddos in a locker room changing. I don't think that's what they want. So there are alternatives to getting that PE credit or athletics credit during the school year. They can take that PE credit online or virtually over the summer. And so what schools will do is sub in an additional elective during the school year so that your child is not having to participate in PE where they have to change in front of their peers. Obviously, in elementary school, this isn't an issue because nobody's changing. The kids are just doing PE in their regular clothes. But this becomes an issue in junior high and high school, and the schools can accommodate it. So make sure, like I said, talk to your kids' school early and often so that you can work with them to keep your child safe, both emotionally and physically. One question that I got in the paperwork is what's going on with CPS. So as far as we know, CPS is still under the directive of investigating parents who are offering gender-affirming care to their children. All school staff are mandatory reporters. But school attorneys that I've worked with seem to be advising their clients, the schools that they work for, to only report if they have a reasonable belief that the child is being harmed. Okay, so that kind of basically implies if you don't believe this child's being harmed because their parents are offering them gender-affirming care, then you don't need to be reporting it. Again, these investigations do not stand up to constitutional scrutiny, meaning that same thing with these laws that are trying to be passed. These are trampling the rights of parents, right, to provide medical treatment to their child, to parent their child, to determine what kind of support they're going to give their child. Parents have a lot of rights when it comes to their children. And so Texas is way beyond the scope of what is allowed by the Constitution. That doesn't mean that they're not going to pass crazy laws and that we're going to have to fight them in court. But I just want you to know that none of this is actually constitutionally allowed. And so I know everybody feels like we're under attack right now, and that's true, but that's not the end of the game. Okay, so we've still got fight left in us, and we are on the right side of it. We're on the constitutional side, and the ACLU is stepping up and fighting this fight with us. So that's really good. So speaking of these laws, I've got some links here, and I can put these in the chat as well. I will tell you that the bill that would basically outlaw gender-affirming care is scheduled for hearings tomorrow. So I've also included a link where you can kind of tell your own story and have that testimony read out loud. It's totally anonymous, but it can be read out loud at the hearing tomorrow. So that's really helpful, just so people can hear, or at these hearings, they can hear people's stories. But this link at the top here tells us kind of where things are in the process, what's been referred to like public health or what's set for a hearing. So far, there haven't been any votes yet on these bills, but that's of course only a matter of time. So please, if you have time, if you want to just submit just a brief testimony about your own personal story, I think that will help. But I will tell you, it does look like these bills are going to be passed. It seems to be a nationwide stance of the Republican Party. So, and it's definitely a concerted effort. There's some PAC that's behind these anti-LGBTQ and anti-trans bills. It's not just the nation deciding this is what they want to do. Like, this is specifically funded by a certain group, and it's just extremism, and it's trying to scare voters and scare parents, and it's definitely working. So that's kind of the overview of what I wanted to give y'all, the information I wanted to give y'all. And before we started, John told me that a few people had written in some questions, and so I have here, what do we do about extreme school board members? And that's a good question. I want to tell y'all that school boards, what they can and can't do, just briefly. So school boards can create student goals and evaluate the district success. So that's one of the jobs of the school board, is to create like measurable outcomes that they want for the students, and then they can evaluate whether the school has achieved those outcomes. They can adopt policies that can kind of guide the district. They can hire the superintendent and evaluate the superintendent's performance, and they approve the annual budget, and that has to be consistent with what the district's vision is for itself. They cannot create individual or district school programming, meaning they cannot pick a curriculum. They have no power over that. They cannot hire or fire principals, teachers, or any district staff. And they can't manage the actual school experience for the children and the children's families. So I hope that clarifies what they actually can and can't do, but we do have these extreme school board members that are running and winning. So here's what I want y'all to do when that happens. First of all, you've got to be aware of your city council and school board races. You've got to figure out it's boring. It's tedious to find out what district am I in, when is this. I mean, these elections kind of happen kind of haphazardly. It feels like they're not really in line with the nationwide elections, but if you pay attention to that, because these races are won and lost with like a few hundred votes. Your school board members should be accessible to you. Accessible, meaning you should be able to say, I want to have a cup of coffee with you and talk to you about what your vision is and what you believe your role is. And talk to them about their positions on these issues. Because what's happening is there's a lot of misinformation out there, like scaring parents about transgender students being in the bathroom with their child and something happening. That's ridiculous. I mean, transgender students are really the least likely to do anything except keep to themselves. So we've got to get this misinformation to stop. And so if you meet with your school board members and talk to them and really hammer home your position and ask them, what is it? Why is your platform this? That's what I want us to do. I want us to really get in their face one-on-one. But you got to get your people to vote too. Get everybody you know to vote. That's the only way we're going to get these people off of these school boards, because you see that they're well funded and they're using extremist language and they're using scare tactics. And so the only way to fight that is by voting and stopping the misinformation and holding them accountable, and making sure that they're doing what they can and can't do. Because when they tell their voters that they're going to somehow influence the curriculum or change the curriculum or fire the principal, that's not accurate. They cannot do any of that. So I want y'all to just be aware of that. And then I had a question about, what do you do if there is no teacher sponsor for a club that your kiddo may want to start, like an LGBTQ club? So that will be defined as discrimination. So what you will want to do is contact the district and explain the situation, and the district will find a sponsor for you. Because if a teacher's just refused, if there's just no teacher that's going to volunteer, that's just not how it works. And that will obviously be a violation of Title IX. So you just want to contact your district at that point. And then that's all the questions I think I had. But John, am I missing some?
We actually had a couple of questions that came in, so I
Okay.
just wanted to see if I can parlay some of these. The first question has to do with, can you clarify specifically under Title IX regarding what constitutes gender-based harassment? So this parent said, if my understanding is correct, gender-based harassment includes harassment based on the perceived sexual orientation or gender identity, offensive jokes, name calling, slurs, rumors, physical aggression, etc. And if this gender-based harassment is severe, pervasive,
Mhm.
and objectively offensive, resulting in impairing equal access to education programs, then that qualifies as a Title IX violation. Is that correct?
Yes, that's great. I think you defined it better than I could have without looking at the definition, but that's exactly right. So anything that can be perceived as harassment or bullying on the basis of gender or gender identity or sexual orientation is going to fall into that Title IX category. So just it's any negative or harassing statements like, and let me just expound on that a little. Some kids are comfortable talking about being transgender, and that's okay, but they don't need to be the Google for every school and every child, and always be the one explaining it or talking about it. So even if someone is genuinely curious, that can quickly devolve into harassment if the transgender student does not want to talk about that. So I want you to be very firm with your school staff about this, that just because your child is LGBTQ or transgender does not open the door for everybody to insist on a conversation with this child at any time that they feel that they have some questions.
Yeah.
So that can very quickly cross that line. So.
Right. So in terms of measuring as a concerned parent would, how should they weigh when to escalate, when to, you know, because bullying can happen at various junctures, at various cadences and things like that, and the frequency and the intensity and things like that. So when is a good measure for
Mhm.
like how should a parent kind of weigh the pros and cons of wanting to pursue it in terms of filing a grievance or anything like that?
Yes. So let me talk about a few different things with that. Number one is retaliation. So I think as a parent, you always worry that if you start down this road, then your child's going to be retaliated against by school staff, and uh, that's also illegal. So they can't do that. So that's a completely whole section in TEA that talks about how school cannot retaliate for a parent or child bringing these issues to the school. So just be aware of that is something that they are prohibited from doing. That doesn't mean that always stops people, but you, as a parent, I think it's fine to start out with partnering with the school to say, this is going on, and I know we all want my child to have a safe and healthy environment, so let's address this. I think if the school, and you will be able to tell if they're taking it seriously or not, and if the school is not doing what you think they need to be doing to protect your child, then you need to really put the pedal to the metal and start saying, okay, now I want a Title IX investigation. Now I think I need to get the Office of Civil Rights involved. This is very concerning to me. So you do have to, it's fine, I think, to start off in a way that where you're working with the school to resolve the issue, but don't be afraid to get adversarial with them if they're not doing what they need to be doing to protect your student.
Another question based on OCR. Do you know how long it's taking on average OCR to reach out to a school, notify them, and begin their investigation once a complaint is filed?
It seems like it's a few months at least. And the timeline or deadline to remember is you've got to make your complaint with OCR within 180 days of the date that you became aware of the discriminatory conduct. Okay, so the day you become aware, you start ticking that 180 down because you want to make sure you get in there with the time within that time frame. If you miss that time frame, you can still make your complaint and you just have to explain why you missed the deadline. But of course, it's just better to get in before the deadline. So it does seem like it's taking them at least a few months to get to the school and start investigating, because they will talk to you beforehand. They'll want to gather all the information. And then, of course, they're inundated with civil rights violations, unfortunately. So.
And this is a pretty nuanced question regarding with the persistent questions or requests for conversations to student about their LGBTQ status, be a violation of Title IX or any of the items that we just mentioned?
Yeah. Okay. So yes, if it's a particular child over and over again after your child has made it clear that that is not a conversation they want to have, now that's becoming harassment. Okay. So it is nuanced, and this is part of your child kind of determining, is this a genuine person who's just curious? And again, you don't have to answer questions, or is there an undercurrent of harassment and bullying? But after that first time your student has said, I don't want to talk about this with you, that should be the end of it. And if it continues even one more time, that's harassment. Because again, this person is singling your child out on the basis of gender orientation or identification.
So this goes along with student rights regarding privacy, right? Because I think that's where the conversation is kind of leading. But can educators tell parents that a student has requested to go by a different name or pronouns, or any other characteristics or information that they share with that educator or admin?
Okay, so are you asking, I just want to clarify, are you asking if a teacher can tell that student's own parents that they're wanting to use a different name or pronoun?
So it's complicated, right? So yes, definitely for that student's parent or
Yes.
legal guardian, but also other parents who may,
Right, so then FERPA comes into play. And so that's the state and federal law that says you can't talk about students' education information to other parents or other students, right? So that would be part of their protected information. So the teacher cannot discuss that. I will tell you, unfortunately, a lot of school staff does not know what the Texas Education Code says, and doesn't really care to. I mean, a lot of times they just make decisions based on what they think is the right thing to do or what they believe to be true. And so, unfortunately, as parents, sometimes we're the ones having to educate them on what actually they can and can't do. And that can be very frustrating. And, that's why I'm an education attorney, is to help you guys navigate that. It's just frustrating that you even would have to hire an attorney to protect your rights and your child's rights. But unfortunately, we see that all the time. So no, a teacher cannot be talking about that information to any other parents.
Right. And I think you already kind of intimated an answer to this question, but are there any local advocates that can help parents navigate these meetings with the schools rather than hiring an attorney?
Yes, there are education advocates. Okay, so that's separate from an education attorney, and they tend to have lower hourly rates. And so I know a few that I can email you to give out, but you can really look up in your area education advocates and should be able to find someone that can go with you to a meeting, give you some advice, talk to the school. And you'll probably find that the schools listen to you more when you have an advocate or an attorney with you. So that's unfortunate as well, but it's true.
What can parents do in terms of not only advocating for their kids, but can parents form some type of coalition with others, at least, a support group where they, their strength in numbers? What can they actually do besides just, fighting what sometimes can feel a very lonesome battle?
Yeah, so that's a great way to get the school's attention. Okay, so if you can talk to other parents, figure out who's also dealing with this. Facebook is unfortunately a good, I mean, Facebook, we hate Mark Zuckerberg, but we like Facebook because it does help connect us with people. And so that's a great way to connect with other parents who are dealing with this, because there are strength in numbers. And if a school starts seeing that several parents have the same complaint, they're worrying about their own liability. And so if you can start reaching out to other parents and figuring that out, and just taking those first few steps of talking and getting coffee with a few parents, that can really strengthen your own case with the school.
Fantastic. Those are, I believe, the majority, if not all, of the questions. If you have any more questions, please feel free to submit them.
Okay.
Marianne, do you want to share a little bit about your practice, as well as as you are comfortable about yourself and
Yeah. So I have a transgender child, and so I've been doing education law for a while, but now since we've been dealing with the school and those issues too, I've obviously gotten pretty well versed in all of this. But I do want to tell you, my practice is not just about dealing with schools that are doing the wrong thing. I can also help, just even if you need help with an ARD meeting or a 504 meeting, or just understanding your rights. I can even a consultation, just to give you some tools. You don't have to, put down a $2,500 retainer and then have me represent you through the whole thing. I just want parents and students to be, first of all, aware of their rights and be able to get some relief if they need it from a school. So just be aware of that. And then my practice also is family law, so I also do custody cases and divorces and things like that. But and so I certainly am happy to help with that. But my focus is kids, and so my concern is, especially with these attacks that we're experiencing nationwide, is keeping our kids safe. And so I am here for that. I want to. I would be very interested to be a part of any of these parent groups that possibly form. So please count me in. But yes, I do think, like as you said at the beginning, my passion is helping protect children. So, and schools can be unsafe in a myriad of ways with our children. So I can help with all of that. So, and I'm hoping that this overview can kind of give you some tools and some buzzwords to use with the school, so that they know that you're aware of your rights. So.
Fantastic. And one more question just came in. Do you, Marianne, also aid with 504 meetings or issues for college level students?
I do university and 504, yeah, everything. So I can do any education issue that comes your way. I can help. Because again, 504 meetings, IEPs, we need to make sure that our kids are getting the accommodations and the evaluations that they need, and I can help with all of that. And then university issues. I mean, even Title IX issues in universities, or grades that sometimes the schools don't do it right, and there could be, it doesn't always have to be discrimination, although sometimes that really does tend to be the undercurrent that we see. But I can help with any of that, cheating, allegations, things like that. I can certainly assist. So
I think to kind of wrap it up, I don't think we talked about this at any length, but in terms of what should, from a documentation perspective, what do you recommend?
To give me a little bit more information about what you're asking.
So in terms of like encountering with bullying, harassment, or any of those things that parents start to pick up, just the slightest change, because these things can can happen all of a sudden, or it could happen
Mhm.
over time. It could be
Mhm.
and so it's it's kind of hard to kind of backtrack if you don't, so it's a little bit of a leading question, but just in terms
Yeah.
of documentation.
That's a great question. There's something I wanted to mention is your schools have cameras everywhere. They shouldn't have them in the bathrooms. If they do, call me immediately. But everywhere else they do. And so you can request to view videos of whatever the incident is that your child's told you about. That is now part of your child's school file. So any video of them is something that you should have access to. If the school tells you we can't get that video ready for you for weeks and weeks because we have to blur out the other children's faces, that's not true. They can blur out their faces if they want to, but they cannot delay giving you a look at that video because of that. They're not required to blur out faces, so just know that. But documentation, I want y'all to mostly communicate with your school staff in writing, okay? Because phone calls and meetings, unless you're recording them, which you're absolutely allowed to do, because Texas is a one-party consent state, which means only one person has to consent to the recording, and that's you, because you're recording it, and you don't have to tell anybody else you're recording. So record all your meetings and phone calls, but try to keep everything to writing if possible, except for the meetings that you have to attend, like a discipline meeting or something along those lines. But just start documenting it early, because you want to be able to have the evidence necessary if an Office of Civil Rights investigation is required, or if you want to start the grievance process and appeal it all the way to the school board, you've got all your evidence ready to go. So, and it won't be like, well, I don't remember saying that, it's in writing. So that's always good to have that. And it can be fast paced, like you said. It can happen, school's going along fine, and then all of a sudden your kiddo's coming home crying, and
Right.
everything, like the proverbial hit the
Mhm.
fan, so it's like you've got to get in there and immediately address it. And so I would encourage you to immediately email your principal, your vice principal, the teacher, and get everybody on the same page immediately.
Great. All right. I think we're almost out of time. Any other questions, last minute questions? So just wanted to wrap up and thank you, Marianne, so much for your time and wonderful information, and last minute questions coming in and addressing all of our concerns. And obviously, parents and those on the call, if you have any follow-up questions, you can email them directly to myself, or just go to directly to contact@pridefiscal.org, or email them actually directly to Marianne.
Hmm?
And Marianne has her phone number up there as well as her email. And yeah, fantastic. Like I said, after this webinar, we'll have a survey out. If you can let us know how we can continue to improve and what information you liked, what information you think we missed, and then the format. We will try to have some of these sessions both online as well as in person, and try to get that parent group up and going as well. And I will also follow up with an email with links, resources, as well as the link to this webinar that is being recorded right now, as well as Marianne, can you share your presentation with us?
I can, yes.
Perfect, perfect. Yep, and then all the handouts and whatnot. So
Yes.
fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Marianne, and thank you everyone for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.